Good soldiers follow orders.
When have we ever followed orders?
Welcome back to the channel. The Bad Batch is over after a 3-season run, and man, do those clones hit an emotional punch that Rey Palpatine never could.
Rey Skywalker.
I mean, come on, guys. I could sit around and watch Omega and her brothers drink blue milk for a whole season rather than watch the sequels and the mess that was that. So I digress. But no, today I want to talk about the legacy of the Bad Batch, the 3 seasons that we got, the true spinoff of the Clone Wars, and really the end of the clone story as a whole. And so the reason I think this show did so well was because not only did it continue the animation style of the Clone Wars, of 7 seasons of really great storytelling that we got with George Lucas's original story, but they continued some of those characters off into the Bad Batch. We continued to see the struggle that the clones dealt with in a great way beyond just their service to the Republic. And, you know, the way the Bad Batch started was Order 66 happened, and our group of clones, Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair, Tech, and Echo, they all dealt with the aftermath of Order 66 and what it was like to transition from the Republic to the Empire. And so what this show did really great was it gave that glimmer of hope that Star Wars truly needs in every one of its projects that I feel not every project has. And so let's just jump back a little bit. You know, the real heart of this story are the clones. But not only the clones, but their loyalty to one another, their brotherhood to one another. And that's what stands them apart from, I think, a lot of characters within Star Wars, a lot of supporting characters within Star Wars. We've always had family when it comes to the Skywalker saga. Star Wars is all about family, right? I mean, you have Darth Vader, you have Anakin, you have Luke and Leia, and you have the whole redemptive story arc of the sins of the father and how sons redeem the father. That's always been a part of Star Wars. You've had that family dynamic that's given a glimmer of hope, saying that if we have those relationships, if we have that family, then they can always rise above something, right? Over the course of 3 seasons, we saw Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair, Tech, and Echo, and Omega go through that transition, not only of the Empire taking slowly control of the galaxy, but we saw them grow as individuals. And I think that was the key shining moment of this story. The final episode was called The Cavalry Has Arrived. Now, to be honest, I thought the show would end in a much different way than it did. It was a lot happier than I expected, and I'm not really complaining about that, honestly. You know, the show could have ended really going out in the Blades of Glory. I thought at least 2 more of the Bad Batch was going to die. My money was based on Crosshair was going to sacrifice himself after a great redemption arc, and my money was on Wrecker, especially because he was injured in that last episode. But, you know, I also thought that Rex was going to show up with all the boys and save the day. But really, instead of doing that, they decided to give the core Bad Batch team and Omega the ability to shine and finish out that complete arc. You know, there's a lot of complaints out there saying that, you know, Omega has always been this annoying kid. She's too hopeful. She's too naive and that kind of thing. And honestly, when the show first started, she was kind of that annoying little kid. And when we met her, she was on Kamino. We were honestly shocked to see a female clone because we had never seen that before. We were wondering, well, what's special about her? What's going on with her? There was that mystery at play, right? And when Order 66 happened and Hunter and the crew met Omega, they immediately got her off of Kamino due to the events that were going on with the Empire. And they spent the first season really protecting this girl because they knew something was going on. Omega was taken off of a life that she's always known, and she was thrown into a galaxy of turmoil, of unfamiliarity, and she was extremely naive. She still thought that, you know, everybody, you know, she saw the best in people, and she thought that things were going to work out in the ways that she would think they would, but that wasn't the case. And so we see the first season, really, the Bad Batch deal with the aftermath of that takeover of the Empire, but not only that, they lost their brother Crosshair to the regulations of the Empire. But then we go to season 2, right? And in season 2, Omega was growing up a little bit, and we saw that the guys had been pouring their skills into her. She was learning more. She was learning how to fly a ship. She was learning how to shoot firearms. She was learning the tactical advances of the group and how they did missions. And season 2 had a lot of filler episodes. There were a lot of things in there that I wasn't sure about, but really the shining elements of the show, and continued to be the shining elements of the show throughout the end, were the clone-specific episodes. I know the show was about the Bad Batch. I know it was about Omega, but really the thing that made the show so great was the overarching clone story. The Bad Batch and Omega were the driving forces to show how the clones were changing in the galaxy and how they were dealing with the aftermath of the Empire taking over. And so what was really great about these episodes that you saw Omega interact with the overall clone thing, she was understanding that, hey, these clones used to follow orders blindly to the Republic. They used to be in service to the greater good, and now they're being treated like just property. They're being thrown away. And Omega didn't understand that. I think what was really great about Omega's arc is once you get to season 3, in season 3, right, she starts off, she's kidnapped, she's in Tantis, and she was a lot more mature, a lot older. That naivety kind of went away. And she still saw the best in people, but she also knew that she could take risks. She also knew that people weren't as good as she thought they were, that there was a clear line between good and evil. And she was willing to sacrifice what was going on with her life during that time to be able to save the clones on Tantis, to be able to save Crosshair. And honestly, without Omega and her hopefulness, I don't know if Crosshair would have ended up becoming, what he was supposed to. He was already, questioning the Empire, but Omega got him off that place and was able to reunite with the brothers and go that direction. And so by the end of the show, I think Omega really had a great character arc. We got enough time with her to be able to go from someone who was really a child and naive and didn't know the world very much to someone who was very capable and was able to really bring her own to the table when it came to her brothers and when it came to the overall arcing story.
There are more prisoners inside, including my brothers. I can't leave without them.
With the backdrop of Tantis, this is really an important location for a lot of fans out there, including myself, who loves the expanded universe, who loves Heir to the Empire. And Tantis was such a really cool location that Thrawn was a part of in those books. And the Emperor had used Tantis as a stronghold to really store a lot of his experiments and a lot of his valuables. And I think it'd be really cool to be able to see this location move forward. I would love to see the Heir to the Empire story adapted. Unfortunately, I don't think we're getting that. But I do think that Tantis could still play a part moving forward.
I say patience. Patience.
Another great part of the story is that you see Crosshair have probably the best redemption arc of the show for sure, but of a lot of Star Wars. Because when we met Crosshair was somebody who he just wanted to follow orders. He thought that by obeying the Empire, by obeying the person that was in charge, that he would be okay. But as you saw in the show, the more that he would do very morally questionable things for the Empire, he would never get the recognition he thought he deserved. He would never get the recognition that he thought he would receive. And so slowly he starts to see that the Empire is completely corrupt. They don't care about him, and that his family truly was with his brothers. But I think for a while there, he didn't believe that. He thought they were crazy. He thought they were traitors. And so by the time we get to season 3, they really formed a great thing by putting Omega and Crosshair in that situation, because they were both wrestling with those questions about, the Empire having the ultimate control, but how do they rise above that? And so that relationship between Omega and Crosshair at the end was really cool, because they really truly became brother and sister. And when Crosshair got his arm chopped off at the end, I think that was a way of the show saying, all that turmoil that Crosshair experienced, all that trauma and this torture that he experienced on Tantis, he was free of that. And that's why he was able to take that initial shot at the end that saved Omega from Hemlock. And so having that arc where Crosshair went from somebody who was a soldier to someone who was confused about his place in the galaxy and was doing some really bad things, to someone who realized that family was the most important thing, and he was willing to sacrifice himself above all else. He didn't even want his brothers to go into Tantis at the end. He wanted to be the only one, and I think that showed tremendous growth on his part. And so I think that ending with the Bad Batch, where they saved all the clones from Tantis, they stopped the Empire's experiments where Hemlock was doing those experiments for the Emperor, and they got off to where they were able to pave their own way, pave their own future. I think it was a really cool ending because the soldiers were finally at rest. They could pretty much do whatever they want. They could live in peace. And Hunter, Wrecker, and Crosshair living on Pabu, really till the end of their days. We saw at the end of the show, Hunter was older, and their age had accelerated, and they were living there in peace. And they watched Omega grow into this young woman. And we see at the end of the show, Omega decides that she needs to go off and fight for the rebellion, that she wanted to be a pilot. And so she had to kind of find her own story apart from her brothers. And I know Hunter was, that was a really heartfelt moment at the end where Hunter was kind of afraid to let her go because he had always been able to take care of her. But she said that she was, she said, you have to let me go and you have to let me do this. And so he said, if you ever need me, we'll be there. And so they kind of left an open-ended. I don't know if we'll see Omega anymore with stories of her in the rebellion. I don't know if we'll see Hunter and the boys anymore, but I think that it was a nice ending considering their lives had been always in service of something else. And they were finally able to live in peace, finally able to be safe and live out their days there. I think there's still a lot of story to tell with the clones. The next thing we see in the timeline is that Rex and Wolf and some of those clones, they're older. We see them in Rebels. They do stuff with Ahsoka, Kanan, and Ezra. And so we know where they end up, but we really don't know what happens between that. What happens with the clones? Do they finally get their rights in the galaxy? Do they even have a rebellion even more against the Empire? Not really sure. I wouldn't be surprised if Lucasfilm announces a new project in this Clone Wars timeline. And honestly, I think they'd be dumb not to, because since Disney has bought Lucasfilm, I think the animated stuff has been the shining light of Star Wars. I think that the stories are better. I think they're tighter. I think the characters are stronger. I think we have really great character development. And that's pretty incredible coming from a bunch of clones.
In my book, experience outranks everything.
We'd love to hear what your thoughts are about the show overall in the comments. So please like, subscribe, and comment, and we will see you next time.